Tonight at 11.
SARS-CoV-2, COVID-19. The virus came into public awareness mid-January 2020. It was announced on January 10th by the World Health Organization. I'm sure everyone is aware of this virus, and you don't need a detailed background. These are my thoughts on the astrology of the situation. Astrology does not make up for common sense, hygiene, and taking care of yourself. And I do not believe one can predict the future with perfect accuracy, even with astrology. You can predict trends and potentials using astrology, but the future is about potentials and not fully determined. I would recommend ignoring any doom and gloom predictions, whether using astrology or some other means. Those are more a reflection of the individual making them and their emotional state than anything real affecting humanity. I won't be addressing everything in this video, just my initial rambling thoughts. In the second video, I will go into more depth and add anything I forget. Every astrologer has a different take on what is happening right now. This is mine. Take it with a grain of salt. The WHO issued its first guidance on the novel coronavirus on January 10th, 2020, the day of the solar eclipse at 20 degrees Capricorn, with the first Saturn-Pluto conjunction at 22 degrees Capricorn happening 2 days later. There's a lot going on astrologically for the United States, but moved into the United States chart's second house a few years ago. It will remain there for many years. This is the focus of the current crisis in the United States. The US chart has Pluto in the second house. Pluto has been in the sign of Capricorn for over 10 years, and Pluto is coming back around to the same spot it was when the US was founded. This is the first time that it has happened in the US history. An individual or nation with Pluto in the second house in their chart, other things, feel secure with material possessions. They have more resources than they realize, but a deep insecurity and unconscious fear that keeps them from realizing it. They also desire material possessions and things for a sense of psychological security. The same applies with the chart of the United States. The US is very materialistic, for good and for bad. Stores like Walmart are a great example of this. We have access to anything we need almost instantly, and now with Amazon Prime and the like. This applies to food as well, our drive-thru and pizza delivery culture. This isn't inherently bad, but things can be excessive. A person who has natal Pluto in the second house has their wealth and resources come and go in extremes. We can see this with the stock market drops over the month of March. Pluto in the second house also has the ability to shift resources for current needs and to find value where value is not seen, and to transform things from one to the other. Our country needs to realize how much wealth we have and how resource abundant we are. It shows how Americans unconsciously give immense power to money and wealth. This applies to the material world, but also to us as people, our self-esteem, our self-worth, how we value ourselves and each other. We need to realize how good we have it. We are very comfortable, and we are already seeing people come together to make do with what we have, both on a more local level, but also in larger business and government. The first reported case in the US was on January 21st, 2020, 2 days after the asteroid Hygeia stationed direct in the US's 6th house on the 19th. Many astrologers have talked about how they didn't see a virus coming. We all knew there would be disruptions to the economy and a shift in the functions of the government and society due to the Saturn-Pluto conjunction, but not a virus specifically. I would argue that this is because there is always the chaos element in life. Like I said, nobody can predict things exactly. This virus was a catalyst for a lot of the other changes and insights and damage happening right now. It was the real-world trigger for a lot that has been building. And the structures of society, from manufacturing and shipping to infrastructure and government, are being strained and challenged. Corporate monopolies, corruption, abuse of power, abuse of government, and greed. The issues are below the surface, which is Pluto, and are being brought to the surface in a hard way. This has been happening for quite a few years now. For example, Hollywood will not be the same after this. Americans' values will change. There will be a lot that comes up to the surface. Not only is Pluto transiting the US chart's second house and natal Pluto, but multiple important planets are doing the same. Pluto is the underlying issue, the change that needs to happen. It usually stays just under the surface of cultural awareness, coming up when triggered by other planets. The slower a planet moves, the longer it has an effect on any given cultural, social, financial situation, etc. Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, as well as asteroids Pallas and Ceres will be moving through the US second house as well and conjunct both the US natal Pluto and the current Pluto. The Saturn-Pluto conjunction, which happened back in mid-January, was the main trigger to unleashing the cascade of effects we are currently experiencing. The virus and then everything else because of it. Pluto brings up issues under the surface that are always there. it forces them into the full cultural focus. The negatives of corporatism and government will come to the surface, as well as the media and any other institutions in America and the world. Our resources and our values are being tested and transformed. Saturn throws our shortcomings in our face. So the combo of Saturn and Pluto means something under the surface, an important issue or issues, gets fully brought into awareness in a harsh way. No sugarcoating. The issues surrounding greed, corporatism, materialism, power, and societal structures have been brewing under the surface. And as a culture, we haven't been fully addressing them. So Saturn comes along and was like the strict boss who catches you not working. All of a sudden, you are hyper-focused on your work, but now your adrenaline is up, and you are on edge with fear. Saturn conjunct to Pluto made us hyper-focus on the issues with our society and our materialistic culture, to put it simply. All these planets in Capricorn can create issues around authority. Either people push back against authority, or people idealize it. Resist the urge to have someone, quote, save you, and resist the desire to blame. Jupiter makes anything it touches bigger, larger, grander. This can be great or it can be horrible. And with Jupiter joining the Saturn-Pluto combo I just described, it blows up the issues. It is over-optimism, and we can see this with people who think they can go out and party on the beach for spring break while the virus is still around. Jupiter is also wisdom and considered benevolent, so it can also indicate a positive final outcome, growth and knowledge and luck for the future. Something that makes me also think a positive outcome will happen is the asteroid Pallas is also conjunct the Pluto-Saturn-Jupiter clusterfuck that is happening right now in the US chart's second house. Asteroids in the main asteroid belt are between Mars and Jupiter and represent parts of our psyche that have to do with connecting the individual, Mars and the other personal planets, to society, which is Jupiter and Saturn. They act as a bridge point between what is self and what is society, and represent as such. Pallas represents, among many things, wisdom, skill, and strategy. Pallas joining the other planets mentioned earlier gives me optimism for the future of this. It injects skill and strategy into the crisis. Pluto, Saturn, Jupiter, and Pallas will retrograde together starting in April, and by mid-May will all be. This will be some relief for the United States. Over the summer will be an excellent time to reassess what we did not do well in our response to the virus, as well as get things ready and prepared for a potential fall outbreak. Americans have been hammered lately with good hygiene tips and ways to prevent the spread of illness, and this is excellent, but also very annoying. I think every single person I know has mentioned flattening the curve or social distancing. We get it. You can repeat what experts say. Good for you. This is a short-term lesson we are going through. The sixth house is about health and how one's daily habits and decisions affect their well-being. With the asteroid Hygeia moving through this part of the US chart, we as a culture are learning good hygiene and basic illness prevention practices. This transit happens every few years, but with the other planets in Capricorn, it is far more dire this time. With everyone being bombarded with information about how to prevent the spread of illness, there will be positive effects over time. Americans are realizing that they, first and foremost, are responsible for their own health, the first line of defense, so to speak. While Hygeia is instilling in Americans good hygiene and illness prevention, strains on the medical system have more to do with the Saturn-Pluto conjunction and Neptune currently opposing the US natal Neptune. This will be a longer-term systemic change in how we go about healthcare. Not just universal healthcare, which has been a topic in the past 10 years, but also the structural and practical issues in our system. Do we have enough supplies? We are seeing this now with hospitals' PPE shortages. And at the same time, we are seeing people be innovative and use the resources they have. There will be longer-term societal changes in America and the world. Some things to be aware of during this Saturn-Pluto conjunction are the rise of authoritarian powers and policies, etc., and the limiting of freedoms, not just temporarily. Also, changes in corporations are going to happen. This is obvious without using astrology, but it has building for a while. The just-in-time economy, how supply chains work, and how the world has become reliant on China for manufacturing, and the issues of our interconnected world. The topic of borders has been very important in America for a while, and this is the beginning of the climax of that issue. The US and the world will realize some of the negatives of expanding the interconnectivity of the world and reducing borders so quickly. Ever since the alignments of Pluto, Uranus, Saturn, Jupiter, and Mars in summer 2010, our current times are very much influenced by them. Mars seems to be an important indicator for the timing of different events and stages in the current process, a faster-moving trigger, so to speak. When Mars crossed the United States ascendant, the first case in the US was announced, bringing the US people into the current crisis. Our identity has become about the virus, and this started when Mars moved into the US chart's first house. Mars then moved to square current Neptune, square the US chart's Neptune, while opposing the US Mars. Much focus was made on the ship the Diamond Princess and the US citizens on board. The ship was quarantined. A side note, this was also when the Senate voted to not impeach the president, ending the impeachment process. Saturn was exactly conjunct to the US chart's Pluto on February 23rd, and I personally think this is when things really started getting serious for the US and our government. Before then, it was seen as a problem away from us, but since the end of February and beginning of March, this has changed. The first reported death in the US happened in late February, and in early March, Mars entered the US chart's second house, amping up the already serious situation. That same day, Saturn moved to the 29th degree of Capricorn. On March 12th, the Sun opposed the US chart's Neptune and squared its Mars. A day later, President Trump declared a national emergency surrounding COVID-19. On March 17th, Mars joined Pallas in conjunction, and on the 20th, Mars was conjunct Jupiter. On March 22nd, Mars opposed the US chart's Mercury. That same day, Saturn moved out of Capricorn into Aquarius. March 23rd, Mars was conjunct Pluto. This is usually a time of violence, and we have seen in the past shootings and acts of violence. With the shelter-in-place recommendations and the virus in general, I doubt we will see nearly as much in the news. I hope people are using the energy of Mars and Pluto constructively. In the US chart's Neptune. On the 26th of March, Venus will enter the US chart's 6th house. At this time, Venus will also trine Jupiter and Pallas. Personally, I think this will bring some relief. It won't be huge or a complete turnaround, but as Venus transits the US 6th house, it will bring some forms of relief, both for the illness and people's mental and emotional state. The cure might advance, for example. On March 27th, Mars will move to conjunct the US chart's Pluto. If a full quarantine/martial law came into the United States, I think it would happen from roughly February 23rd to the end of March 31st. I think starting March 30th, things will begin to get better. Jupiter will be opposing the US Mercury, and some forms of insights or ideas will come then, as well as some inspiration for the American people. That same day, Mars, the planet that has been the trigger for amping up energy and focus around the virus, will move out of Capricorn and into Aquarius. This will again bring some relief, and people will start recognizing that. When I say relief, I want to emphasize I am talking about steps. It won't all go away overnight, but with each step, things will get and feel better. Until potentially next fall, at least. On March 31st, Mars will conjunct Saturn, and after that day, we will know if we are doing the correct work to suppress the virus. I think come April 1st and definitely beyond, things will start to be a lot better in the US. I think between April 1st and roughly April 17th. April 4th to 5th, Jupiter will conjunct Pluto. And on the 6th, Ceres will leave the US chart's second house. The end of the toilet paper wars and crazy rationing in general. I think things will start to get better here, if they haven't already. We will have a good plan in place as a nation, and people will feel less fearful, less irrational. As a country, we can and will figure this out. It won't feel nice, and it will be hard, but that's life. Final note, politics are and will continue to be a major part of this situation, virus or no virus, and they won't go away when things change. This summer and fall, politics will become the main focus again in the media and in our culture in general. There is a lot happening in the government, media, and finance behind the scenes during a Jupiter-Saturn-Pluto conjunction. Be wary of Hegelian dialectics and solutions to problems no one has. I will address these more in the next video. Over the summer, Jupiter, Pallas, Saturn, and Pluto will all retrograde together. Both Jupiter and Pallas are signifiers of growth, wisdom, skill, and luck, and signify an overall positive outcome from all of this. In a few years, yes, but positive. Part 2 will be up in a few days. Until then, thank you and take care.